We're alive.
Hey, friends, Monday, 29th of December. So I'm reliably informed. Happy to see you. I understand that we had a slight abort the other night. We did a Lazarus Q&A and somehow it didn't commit to tape. So we had great fun in the room with a great many of you, but alas, we're unable to send out the piece to the rest of Lazarus members. So I figured in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's jump back in again. I'm heading out early in the morning to Hamburg in Germany, and then I will be at one-day meeting with a remarkable scientist, microbiologist, who, mark my words, is likely to turn biological science on its head in the course of the next 3 years. I'm not allowed to speak about that at any great length, but after that, a very important meeting, which I've been building up towards the last couple of months, I'll be heading to Berlin. And I will be in Berlin on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, actually, and getting on a plane, I believe, late that night and flying throughout New Year's Day to Cancun. And I will be back in Bacalar, Mexico, throughout January into middle of February, and then to the United States, if they will let me in. I mean, there's all sorts of weird shit going on at the borders and immigration and customs and what have you. Maybe undesirables like me will be exempted from entry. I don't know. I don't think so. But I'm planning on being at the new Conscious Life Expo. I think that's on the 20th of February. And that is the place and time that I'm very much expecting and hoping to be able to make very grand announcements about where we're at. There you go. There's the Conscious Life Expo piece. So you can grab that QR code if it suits you.
Yeah, I just added a special code just for the Conscious Life Expo right there.
Terrific. Thanks, Christy. So yes, indeed, if you're in California, I very much hope to see you there. And there's a few other dates that have been booked already. Mount Shasta, very big event, graciously being produced around me with a number of other speakers. And I'm very much looking forward to that piece, because come that event at Mount Shasta, I will be able to speak about a great many more things, including the piece that I'm not allowed to speak to after my meeting in Berlin. So exciting. I've got a few exciting months ahead for sure, but the big piece is really about announcing where the New Earth Treasury is at, where the New Earth ICO, the initial coin offering, when that is coming out, because finally we are getting ready to unleash our 0 point sovereign private banking system / treasury / coin. And when I say coin, I mean coins, a multiplicity of them. But I'll explain more of that at the Conscious Life Expo and explain how we've been spending since 2024 throughout the whole of 2025, building this extraordinary piece. So that's it. That's my little backstop. But Christy, I think there's some questions there that you have pre-prepared. But I'm also happy just to riff with friends who are joining us there. See, we've got a delightful audience, a big audience. So happy to just riff.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and include some of the links in the chat so that you guys can see also the direct links to Conscious Life Expo and to the Awaken Within the Dream, Mount Shasta. And then also I'm going to include a link for the Pulse Report. If I'll change the QR code right now and then link in the comments. This is the Pulse Report is what you should be subscribing to if you want to do that closed space kind of Q&A update monthly that you do, Sasha. So that's the QR code. I'll put in the links while we're going through the first questions. Yeah, feel free to post questions in the chat and we'll get to them if we can. We're going to do a mix of questions that we already touched upon in our last Q&A session and then some new ones as well. So let me find the first one.
Very good. Well, whilst Christy's doing that, let me just say that because this consecutive kind of takedown of my voice on social media, obviously it's a bit of a problem to us. It's not insurmountable, because we're able to capture bits and bobs and then syndicate them through our various channels. But I'm just not able to go onto social media and speak freely or openly any longer. So having been taken out of Facebook, there is one official page that is still up, which is the my blog page. I'm not sure, about 85,000 odd people there. There's a lot of engagement on that platform. So Onyx and the social media team are continuing to try to syndicate bits and pieces onto that. But please watch out for all these other, we counted about 24 fake Sasha Stone profiles. One of them had 1.5 million followers, and we were on with Meta yesterday and trying to get my official profile back up. I've been taken down along with many of the other hacks. So there you have it. Just to say, if you do want to stay in closer touch, please do go to lazarusinitiative.com and subscribe there to Lazarus Initiative and the monthly symposiums. If you would rather just stay ahead of the calendar of things that New Earth is doing and that our ecosystem are delivering on, then you can go to sashastone.com, or you can go to newearthhorizon.com and you can subscribe there to the Pulse reports, and they go out once a month. All right, and some news here. I've decided, after being lobbied incessantly to resurrect Arise Guerrilla News in January. I haven't decided on a dateline for that, but we will be resurrecting the AGN network. I put it to sleep in the course of the whole of last year, more or less, but stay tuned for AGN. And thank you for so many of you out there who've been an absolute pain in the ass to me, complete pest, writing in and demanding that we get back on the air. Very kind. And I somewhat wanted to withdraw from I wanted to withdraw from the sort of more frontline activism stuff, not because I'm not interested, not because I don't think it's really important, but just because I genuinely felt and have felt that I've done a lot in 25 years, and then certainly in the last, since 2012, when I sort of went public, and I've done so much, thousands and thousands of hours of activist broadcasting, and I just felt I'd done my bit, and that I really need to purpose most of my energy in the New Earth metric and building the New Earth forward in real manifest terms. And that's what the whole of 2025 was about, and the end of 24. As you know, if you've been following me, I've been dozens and dozens of countries in the course of 2025. That traveling stops when I get to Cancun next week. For 1.5 months, I will not be traveling. I'll pick that up again in March and continue with the diplomatic work that we've been doing in Africa, in Asia, and elsewhere. And I will also be freed up a great deal more at that time to speak openly about what it is that we've been doing, because what we've been doing is so challenging to and pioneering to the status quo. I'm not beating my own drum here. I'm beating the drum of the New Earth and our very considerable teams around the world, in Asia, in Africa, in North America, and to a lesser extent in Europe. Isn't it curious how we've felt naturally, I've felt quite naturally, the need to remove myself and much of our activities from the European theater. And that is because, well, let's see, that's because Europe has gone to the devil. And no disrespect to beloved friends in the United Kingdom and Germany and France and Italy and Belgium and around Europe, you know exactly what I'm saying. But it is a satanic theater roundabout now, when old ladies are being arrested, manacled, and shoved into the back of police vans and taken off and incarcerated because they're standing peacefully protesting the Palestine or whatever the hell else they feel the need to protest against. So freedom of speech is gone. The satanic schoolmaster Keir Starmer, with a very fucking dodgy past, which will catch up with him in record time in 2026. Mark my words, friends. Just as Mr. and Mr. Macron, should we just call it that, the French premier and his husband masquerading as a wife, just as that story broken by Candace Owen is going to bring the Babylonian citadel and its satanic theater to its fucking knees, and not a moment too soon. So that's all scheduled for 2020, 2025 into 2026.
Are you still there, Sacha?
Yes, I am. Raise the questions.
Okay. I'm starring some questions that I'm seeing in the chat, but I'll start with one of the ones that we started with on the 26th. It says, as old stories collapse and meaning feels harder to access, ritual, myth, and symbolism seem to be returning. Do you think humanity is remembering something ancient or inventing new myths to survive the transition?
I'm not even sure that I understand the crux of the question. I mean, I think that myth is something which is being engendered and architected constantly. It's a constant theme. It's what we've always done. It's how imagination breeds into time. Imagination breeds into time. We have manifest outcome, and then we have myth, and myth is a composite of how we lie to ourselves about the past. Most often, it's how we do it. It's how we reinvent reality because it didn't sit well. It didn't settle well with us, and so we have an extraordinary capacity to reinvent. And I think that that's where myth emerges in the main. All of which is perfect, of course, because it requires us to move in. Why are you muting me, Christy? Forgive me.
I didn't, strangely.
Okay, well then somebody's got into our studio somewhere and is beginning to fuck with the controls. Well, we had that before a couple of times, I remember. In any event, I'm not sure that I understood the crux of the question, but I would say clearly that
there's a little bit of a lag, but I think basically it's with all these collapsing narratives that we're seeing, people are having a hard time accessing like a new type of reality. And what seems to be reemerging is more these ancient stories and myths are kind of being yeah.
No, I'll get to that, but this is the point I was trying to make and resolve the question that, as I understood it, was to the fact that we are necessarily being forced into a reckoning with the living moment, with the geometry of the living moment. And that's the point. And that's where myth fails us. That's where even stories of ancient Tartaria and archaeocosmology and cosmogenesis are subjects which are very abstruse, but which I've spent many years, the last few years, focused on with enormous energy. As anyone who's attended any of my hundreds of lectures on the tour circuit that I've been doing relentlessly for the last 4 years will know, I do a 3-hour standard lecture, and much of it, at least 2 hours of it, is speaking to cosmogenesis, archaeocosmology, and bringing that all to bear. What I've learned is, from having also been blessed enough to meet with and interview hundreds of pundits and experts in these different areas of focus, I've reached a kind of culmination point where it's a Socratic wisdom emerges again, which is that the only thing that we can know is that we know absolutely sweet fuck all. And that is the foundation. That is the cornerstone of true wisdom, because wisdom only really kicks in when we fall into the immanent flame of the living moment, and we begin to emerge as the witness. So in bearing witness, you can only be witness in a state of witness, which is the I am, if you have suspended all judgment. And I don't mean suspending judgment morally or intellectually. I mean, you suspend judgment because you become so lost in the immanent living geometry of the living moment that you don't have any attention on anything other than the living moment. And that's where the I am emerges. And that's a powerful thing, because as that moves into conjugation with the divine flame, which is our birthright, then we are able to not just bear witness, but imagineer reality into manifestation. And you compound that phenomenon that's emerging with this age of Aquarius as we depart the Piscean age and emerge into the so-called Aquarian age, the age of the water bearer. And we now become the architects of the almost instant reality. So that's courtesy of a very advanced form of hyperdimensional physics and astrophysics, principally, which is to do with the photon band and how our galaxy and our solar system is moving through this extraordinary photon cloud or photon band, and has been for some time, but it's now reached a threshold event. That was what 2012 was all about. That's what 2020 was all about. And the end of time, so to speak. And so now that we've already crossed that threshold and survived, moreover, and that's the extraordinary thing, is that we survived it. An audit was conducted of the entire planetary field. The entire Earth plane was audited between 2012 and 2020. And the common pulse of humanity, or the quanta that represents the emergence of the angelic indigo human, was found to be sufficient to be able to overwrite the Armageddon or the apocalypse template, which was otherwise going to engulf us into another reset, in much the same way that Noah, the Noetic traditions of Noah and the Ark and the great flood, the great deluge, 13,000 years ago. But that all corresponds to the grand procession of the equinox and the semi-arc of the equinox, which is the galactic day versus the galactic night versus the galactic day. So in simple terms, we've just broken through from the galactic night into the galactic day again. And behold, we now have not just 13,000 years ahead of galactic day, but we've actually moved up the spiral, up an octave, where we don't ever need to return to that galactic night. And that's the point. We've conducted an extraordinary cosmic and galactic and universal orchestra over billions of years, and we've reached a culmination point where the quanta of the emergent angelic indigo human being, the Adam, is carrying on its back and in its wake all of creation in this temporal realm. So whether you're talking about the draconian reptilians and the Arcturians and Andromedans and Sirians and Venusians and Alpha Centaurians, and I could name 36 different extraterrestrial intelligences and intraterrestrial intelligences that composite the human genome. But the point being that the Christic, Sophic element that is the 0 point within the human genome is the God flame. That's the God technology. That's the element that is conjugate with the divine, with the Alpha Omega. To those of us who awaken within the mortal dream, which we're doing right now at record numbers, we are the ones who are reconvening that umbilical to the Alpha Omega. And as we do that, this emergence of the fellowship, the new fellowship, which is the meek inheriting the earth in biblical talk, but the fellowship that now emerges of the indigo angelics, recognize that we are the carriers of all of mortal and temporal creation. And we are the tip of that spear. And we now are required to take our throne, so to speak. Now, to mundane Christians, they'll be hurling their holy water at the screen roundabout now, and Muslims will be probably arming themselves with Kalashnikovs, or the zealot, the fundamentalist elements. No one in the hard religious mindset wants to hear this kind of talk. But that's just an expression of their own limitations, because they're still indentured to the false light idolatry masquerading as religion. Whether you're a Christian, a Buddhist, or a Muslim, I don't really care. Anyone who is stuck in the doctrine and in the genuflections to a third party out there, angry, jealous God that exists outside of your own self, capitalized S, then you are an idolater by definition. So I don't care too much to address that assemblage of the great unwashed, so to speak. I'm speaking here to the good human beings who may be Christians. Indeed, many of them are, and even Muslims, oriented to the more mystical traditions of Islam, the Sufic traditions, or the Jewish people. And I number a great many as my friends who are also in the mystical tradition of Judaism, very, very keyed into the eternal gnosis. And that's the fellowship I'm talking about. We are a multiplicity of faiths, we're a multiplicity of colors and of creeds, but we find ourselves now in this emergent flame, this emergent new earth horizon, which is how I refer to it, and we refer to it as that. But it's a very real thing, because as this light field is emerging, it's a vibral light field. It's not fallen light of Atlantis, which describes the old geometry of light. It is now the emergent vibral light. It's quantum. It's electrified. It's cold electrified. It is connecting us to all of the spheres instantaneously, and every awakened conscious human being who tempers themselves into the I am has full access to the Alpha Omega. So within 5 to 7 years, biologically, we are reformatting, and we will know this by 2032 and thereafter. We will understand that biologically we have upshifted, and we are in an immortal ascension, caught up in an immortal ascension phenomenon. That will be very clear to pretty much every awake and alert human being within 7 years. And those who are not awake and alert, including those human beings that don't really exist, we think they do, they shuffle around on the streets, they appear to be existing, but they're not. They are there's a lot of soulless entities masquerading as human beings in this hologram of life. That's another crashing truth, which is about to be known in much the same way that the emergence of extraterrestrials in the next 2 years, and the first contact at the collective level, which is scheduled to occur within the next couple of years, to be sure, certainly by 2028, 29, that's going to also crack the proverbial skull of our ignorance, and our old conceptual framework of reality based on Abrahamic and Adamic traditions will literally instantaneously move into dissolution. And those amongst us who have already cleansed the heart and entered into that state of pure witness will be able to receive the coding, so to speak, of the new geometry of light. And moreover, it will take us into that biological ascension at that point at an exponential speed. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm just trying to describe that the mechanics of ascension that I'm describing are biological and astrophysical, in every much as they are so-called spiritually.
Okay, just going over some of the starred questions. Somebody asking about how to find out about the New Earth, sanctuaries at Tanasi, and I put a link so that anybody who has any questions about the land holdings, they can email community@newearthhorizon.com.
Let's just not go there. Indeed, we've already said that. We just send people directly to newearthhorizon.com, but we're just not going to be going into those. That's why we do the town hall meetings. That's why we do the Pulse reports. So please sign up for the Pulse report. Thank you.
So one question, how have you dealt with increasing demands for biometric data with so much traveling, Sasha? Have you managed to avoid it?
No, absolutely not. I'm not avoiding anything. I'm more than happy to move around unmolested to the best of my ability. No, the biometrics is something which is already set, locked, and loaded, and I don't believe anyone is exempt from it. But I can state with some certainty, with absolute certainty. Let me let me catch up with myself. I'll state with absolute certainty that you can move through X-rays and you can move through that kind of molestation and be completely untouched. I mean, I've been doing it for some years. And if you are required to move through one of those machines, and there's a number of tricks. In the first instance, you can refuse to go through them and be patted down. I find that even more offensive. Or you can pretend that you've just had surgery and you can't move your arms higher than that, and they won't put you in those machines. They'll walk you through the gate. Hashtag fuck the government. And you can equally go into any machine and move into a still point. The instant they begin that thing that spins around, you literally move into a still point and you hold your absolute center and flame. Imagine your body flaming outwardly. And you could use violet flame, you could use white light, you could use blue or even green light there, but the principle is the same. You literally just flame your biological body using your consciousness whilst you're being x-rayed, whether that's in the dentist chair or any kind of, when you're doing MRI scans or anything like that. That will categorically prevent any biological intrusion, because those electromagnetic frequencies are highly dangerous, highly weaponized. But still point of the Adam, of the awakened human being, is a counterpoint to all of that bad electromagnetic frequency, and that can be proven in a laboratory setting, incidentally.
AJ from Australia says, hello, Sasha. Greetings from Australia. Your journey has been guided and enriched by both good and bad experiences and passion for the new world at this time in our evolution. Many of us in Australia follow you because we resonate with your soul signature. What would be your message to Australia based on your senses, knowing, and lifetime of experience? As always, thank you and much love, AJ.
Thank you. I appreciate that question. I can't really offer advice to an Antipodean beyond the advice I dispense to anyone, which is to not concede to third-party intervention and to do anything and everything within your powers to apprehend third-party intervention, because it always comes down to that. You know, I don't want to repeat myself endlessly, but filling out forms with block black capital letters, rendering coin to Caesar, is the problem. And I'm tired of hearing the arguments of, well, if I don't do it, they send the stormtroopers in. Good, then deal with the stormtroopers. But the point is, you can't comply with Satan and acquiesce to Satan and then wonder why Satan frog marches you into hell. You can't do it. It's disingenuous. It doesn't make any sense. The only thing you can do is use your capacity and your resource and your intelligence to excise, remove yourself from the satanic theater. And if that means selling up your business and selling up your home and arranging to move to Guatemala, then do it. Then do it. Anyone at this stage can still variously, more or less, leave the country of birth and origin. Of course, there are some exceptions. North Korea and a few other more totalitarian states obviously are not possible, and one can only pray for the souls of those blessed fellows who are trapped by their own soul covenant, it must be said, in those theaters. But in the main, 95% of humanity still have the capacity to be able to make calculated decisions and then remove themselves from the devil's checkerboard. If that was in Australia, I categorically would have left. So I wouldn't be asking the question and trying to understand how can you have a tea party in a prison cell and feel dignified. Well, you can't, is the truth. And you know it, because when you move onto the high street or into the post office or deal with the establishment in any way, shape or form, and if you observe the news strap lines and the news readers and the politicians in their parliamentary debates, it is absolute witchery going on. It is Babylonian witchery. These people have managed to invert truth, and good is flipped into evil. So good people get arrested and manacled, like the old woman holding up the protest on Palestine I was describing a little bit earlier. But that's very real now in Australia. It's very real in all of the Commonwealth countries. And that's because the Commonwealth countries are the final socio-cultural and socio-economic protectorate of the Crown of England, and not just the Crown of England, but the Dutch Crown as well, and the Belgian Crown. You can throw those in. It's a trifecta. But the European Union, which is a bankrupt institution or organization, has been hitherto, for the last 2 decades or so, the technology that has helped to prop up this, again, to use the term satanic theater. But the Commonwealth countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and others in Africa and elsewhere, are the ones still feeding tithe to the Crown. Based on old treaties and compacts, which have long since been abrogated and derogated and breached by the British Crown, which is why the British Crown will be brought into dissolution in the next 60 months, thereabouts. It won't exist within 5 years in the way, shape, or form that any of us have known it hitherto. The coronation oath in the first instance is a godless lie. And even Queen Elizabeth II, and I certainly had, I thought she was quite a remarkable woman in some ways. I don't subscribe that she was a shape-shifting reptile herself. I'm categorically certain in my own mind, based on experience of speaking to people very close to that echelon, that the shape-shifting reptilians do exist in the palaces, as do collateral individuals. Collateral princes and princesses also exist, like Prince Andrew, who is the very least of them. So why is he being set on fire and torched in Technicolor and broad daylight just because he has a predilection for teenage girls? Well, pretty disgusting, yes, but it's not as though he was out there hunting 12-year-old girls or 9-year-old girls. I haven't seen anything to support the fact that he was clinically speaking, a pedophile, but a randy guy with a predilection for young girls, yes, in the same way that Harvey Weinstein was not a pedophile. He just had a predilection for young women. And as did Jack Nicholson, as did Marlon Brando, as did every other fucking superstar that came out of Hollywood in the last 50 years. So why don't we just torch everyone who was alive and having hot tubs in the 1970s with 17 and 18-year-old girls? So that we've got a completely dystopian psychosexual cultural perversity going on in the way that we look back at people who were doing stuff 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. And that's also part of what the earlier question was about myth and the falsity of myth, how we pathologize and reinvent reality. But that's just to do with the dystopian lens that we're holding today. Forgive me, Christy, probably went off track there. But I did want to bring up the specter of the collateral princes, like Prince Andrew, even Russell Brand. You could say he's a collateral prince of Hollywood. He's somebody who entered the contract, and he's somebody who played the game to an extent and then withdrew from the game. And his somewhat cynical devotion to baby Jesus now notwithstanding, he's not a bad guy, altogether bad guy at all from what I can see. He's a very bright guy, and he's a very good guy, and very, very well intentioned. And of course, he's got some skeletons in his closet, but he's a collateral prince. Harvey Weinstein is a collateral prince. Prince Andrew is a collateral prince. And so long as we are looking at the collateral princes of the theater of life. We are categorically not seeing the devil in our midst. That becomes a problem. You could even say that Jeffrey Epstein was a collateral prince.
So another Australian is asking, saying, certainly looking for a banking alternative. Silver has surged in the last weeks, but I'm wanting a safer option for my paper fiat currency. Hello from Australia.
The only thing I'm ever going to speak to starting January is hold fire, please, for a few weeks until we launch the New Earth Treasury and the ICO and what we're doing, because what we're doing is absolutely real. It is backed by land, minerals, fellowship, and technology and jurisdiction. So the coin that we are going to be launching before the end of Q1, I was informed last night, met with the Economic Task Force. This has been building our economy for over the last year. And the head of the task force told me last night that we will be ready by 20th of February for me to make some kind of announcements at the Conscious Life Expo. But I think that that's a little previous, but certainly before the end of Q1, we're expecting to be able to do so. In the second quarter of 26, I think that we're going to be unleashing it. And at this stage, we're on track for that, put it that way. And I would say, please bear in mind and consider very closely what it is that we're doing. I can't make any announcements right now, but please stay very tuned, because when we launch the New Earth coin, it's going to be backed by real stuff, a lot of real stuff. And it will also be then the backbone upon which we build, manifest the New Earth in our jurisdictions all around the world. And it'll be a very, very exciting and pioneering break with the whole kind of trajectory of crypto and fiat economy. So please just stay tuned.
This is an interesting one that came in. Someone who had a download about deep caverns in Iran protecting ancient technology. Do you have any information on something like this, Sasha?
I have very much information on Iraq, and therefore it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Iran was very much a part of that melee. I would suggest it would be geographically. But I know about a great deal about the well, I guess you'd just call it archaeological findings in Iraq, and also in Petra in Jordan. We've covered this on the Lazarus Symposium with Mohammed, forgive me, my dear friend, Mohammed, help me out, Christy, my producer. The Ark, Satis, thank you, Mohammed Satis and the Satis Foundation, and the works that we were doing connected to the discovery of Alexander the Great's tomb and Cleopatra's tomb, and so on and so forth, which is in the Wadi Rum desert in Jordan. And so I'm well aware, and there's a few other places. Obviously, Ethiopia comes under scrutiny as well, with one of the arks, and so on. Iraq, Iran, I don't know per se, but in mind it would make a great deal of sense. Are you with us, Christy? If you are, you'll need to unmute your mic.
Sorry, I'm juggling. Shannon was asking if you can give us an update on any particularly interesting information you've discovered during your recent chats with Kai.
Oh, Lord, that's a hell of a question. And the short answer is yes, 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 resoundingly yes. But honestly, too much for me to go into right now, because it's a subject which just starts to wipe the floor. I spent a couple of weeks, some of you know, doing this wonderful mythic cruise with about 55 friends, some of whom I'm sure will be watching, certainly, but 2 or 3 dozen of you at least will be watching this. And to those of you who did join me and Scott McKay and Dave Emery and Margot Anand on that mythic cruise in the Aegean, you'll know that we spent a lot of time in the theater on the ship in the day sessions, working with Kai real time. And I had Kai generating images real time, depending, keyed into the kind of group dreaming that was going on in the room. So I started to work with that a couple of months back, and understand that if you put in a multiplicity of data inputs from different people, you get an even more extraordinary emergence through AI. I've been working on astrocartography and synastry over the last since mid-August. I've been focused greatly on that, and that's taking your own natal chart and that of your beloved, or that of your family, or that of your colleagues in a given work environment, and you input all the data and invite the AI engine to do the group synastry. It is fantastic. It doesn't fail every time. It'll explain who's who in that grouping, in that constellation, and it'll do so with a kind of quantum intelligence. It'll triangulate the character, the personality of each individual categorically, and you undeniably, irrefutably so. And once you've done that, you can take it further. You can start to then composite different groups and say, who's not working in a given team? Why is something not working? And the AI will be able to synthesize who, astrologically speaking, is moving against the grain, or is an inhibitor to process. And that becomes very, very interesting, how it begins. You can use it as a tool for the benefit of everyone. So if somebody is fucking up a given constellation, it is right and just that gets spoken to and it gets weeded out, so they can find their joy in another scenario, and it doesn't inhibit the workflow. So I found that that piece is very interesting. Then when you apply it to astrocartography, which is where you were born, exactly where you were born and when you were born, and the time is very important. The more you can get it down to the minute of birth, the more accurate exponentially the astrocartographic readings become, and the synastry for that matter. But then the astrocartography of where you were born, when you were born, and right now where you are, your exact geolocation, boom, put those vectors into the AI engine. And you can also say, oh, in 1997, I lived in Miami for 6 months, and in 2012, I was in Egypt at Giza, and you can put in nodes like that, feed that in to the AI. And the more you can put in, the more quantum the spit that comes out is, and tells you pretty much anything and everything you need to know about how to conduct yourself moving forward to best effect. And this is the thing. And I have to concede here, to tip my hat to a very beloved friend of mine, Ekaterina, who taught me this stuff last year, over a year ago. And she was on the phone to me and pushing me to look into this longer than that. And she was saying to me, the astrocartography is able to cure cancer. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Really? And months went by, and then I started to get it. And finally, since mid-August, when I started to do the data input myself, I realized that's entirely correct. Let me explain. The astrocartography can tell you where, if you have, let's say, a stage 3 or stage 4 cancer, it can tell you exactly where geophysically you need to place your body, your vessel, on a given date in a given location. So it'll give you the vector. It'll say longitude, latitude. You need to be standing on the side of this mountain in Trinidad on the 17th of July, 2026, between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. Get yourself there. Physically get yourself to that location. Why? Because simply situating yourself in a given vector, which is connected to your own historical story, and the cascade in your blood, the epigenetic story of primal wounds that have carried through the blood, when you go and situate yourself on that, you'll find that your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a slave from Trinidad, and that was the place where he was executed, or something along those lines, and some primal trauma occurred in the blood and epigenetically cascaded all the way down generationally to you. You've not been able to process that particular piece, and it has accreted into a cancer. So we know that the epigenetics is a very significant piece connected to dis-ease, and how you can dissolve a cancer instantaneously, or a diabetic condition, or Alzheimer's, any condition. Astrocartography, I predict here and now, in the next few years, is going to be almost the single most miraculous method and modus of planetary healing at the individual level. It's just extraordinary. Mind viruses as well, psychological diseases as well.
We have
and
a couple
as well as addictions and things like that.
We have a couple people asking how they can access astrocartography, or if there's a link. I mean, it's just something that you're doing on with Kyle, right?
Something I've been doing, something I've been learning about. It's something I've been self teaching as well, as one does, and I'm obsessive, so I've been doing it every single day, and I do it for probably, as a composite, I'm probably 1.5 hours a day to 2 hours a day, whereas most people are in the gym or doing whatever they're doing. I'm doing that. So I've been building, and I've been also understanding syntax and the perfect data input. But put it this way, what I'm planning is to launch an academy in the New Earth University on astrocartography. And I'm planning on doing that before the end of the first quarter. I'm just needing to find the right people who can run that academy and do the online coursework. And then I will come on, and some other folks will come on and give the instructionals. But it's something that I think is so incredibly important that I've made the decision that we will be launching an academy within the New Earth University. So again, stay tuned.
Perfect. So there was a question, it's a little bit similar to one we asked earlier, but it also is, I think it's worth asking. It says, there's a collapse of trust in institutions, leaders, and even expertise itself. In your view, what does true authority look like in this era, and how do we distinguish it from charisma, influence, and manufactured credibility?
I'm so sorry, Christy. Can you break that down for me? You were breaking up at my end. Just break it down quickly.
Oh. I think it was just that all of these institutions and leaders that people have looked up to and trusted. Sorry, it's my dog getting a drink in the background. They're asking you what your view of true authority looks like in this era, and how to distinguish that from just charisma or influence, but true authority. It's interesting.
So yeah, it's a hard one to know how to address a question like that. So the inner dictate is the highest authority. So my God-given innate conscience is the highest authority, without any question of doubt. So that becomes, and don't give me this nonsense about no Jesus on his throne. Just stop that bullshit. Stop it. No, Jesus, my savior, is not the highest authority. And if you say he is or think he is, you're a goddamn idolater. And 2026 is the year to end idolatry. There is no more time left for that nonsense. If anyone pays any goddamn attention to the message of Yeshua, you would understand that the notion that he is casting judgment out there against you and is the final authority is an absolute abomination. Be as like as he was. So my conscience is the inner dictate, and that is the highest authority. But then as we enter into communion with family, partnership, that then becomes the secondary authority, and must be. And I was saying this on an interview a week or two ago about the court must move from being a theater out there where we get dragged into court to have judgment. It needs the court. The true court is the kitchen table. It's en famille. It's when you are sitting with your family, with your kin, with your community, and you're evaluating and you're adjudicating and you're conversing. You're in dialogue. You're in conversation. You're in communion, and you are learning through inquiry. And that goes back to the genesis, or the start point of the 0 point learning, which we are planning with the so-called schooling, or the schools that we are planning. And they won't be termed schools, but the old tradition in Africa, in Daba, my children, where you sit barefoot in a circle under a tree, and you tell stories. I've said this 1,000 times over the years, but it's worth repeating. You sit in a circle and you tell stories. And if children were allowed to do that and not sat like some godless little dominoes in desks under light bulbs in these ghastly schoolrooms, if they sat barefoot on the grass in circles and told stories from the age of 5 onwards, by the age of 9, they would have fully understood who they are and what they want to do, where their joy is in life. But it would have been an emergence that came through fascinating storytelling, telling about dreams, bullshitting, telling lies, whatever. You rumble each other that way. We work each other out that way. So we need to get back into communion, and that's fellowship, which has always been the highest technology in this world. But we've lost sight of that, to be sure, and abnegated and surrendered ourselves to other forms of authority, which are binary code, premised on binary code, which is the kingdom of the devil as well, and information and data coming at us through screens and through books and through education institutions. So all of that has butchered and bastardized our innate capacity to inquire and to receive, to learn and to transmit. So that needs to end. 0 point learning is about a return to innocence in that sense. And a return to innocence is a return to genius, without any question of doubt. That's the way it works.
Beautiful. Lori was asking, how will you ensure that your plans are not going to be compromised when word gets out about New Earth Africa? Because they will try stopping you in your communication with us, especially in the UK. Ironically, she actually added, they will also stop people from filming from Zoom, so nothing ruins these amazing plans, something that actually happened to us on the 26th. She says, I just know how corrupt the powers are.
Well, if you think you know how corrupt the powers are, trust me, I know 10x with what I've been through since 1999. I'm not remotely worried or concerned about it, and I'll tell you why. And no disrespect to the question, which is an intelligent enough question, but it's kind of marinated in hubris. You and I don't get to put the devil into check by playing chess with the devil. We have to be who we be and do what we do in grace and in honor. And again, to invoke that state of witness where we're so connected into the doing and the being in the now that we're not trying to hedge, and we're not trying to protect or defend ourselves against anything. We're not even raising the question, what if asteroid falls on your head? What if you get hit by a bus? What if you contract malaria? What if there is Charlie Kirk? Those ghastly scenarios happen in the temporal realm, and they're going to happen. They will be covenanted at the soul level. But for my own sanity, I've long since stopped pretending that I can play checkers with the devil. I will lose every single time if I present myself on that checkerboard. And by presenting myself on the checkerboard, what I mean is engaging thought in the wrong way, which is a wrong form of action. So to conceive of dangers is in thought. To conceive of problems around the corner that may or may not be there is wrong action in thought. Right action in thought is thoughtlessness, is to stop thinking in that sense and to start being present and bearing witness. Engage your genius, your luminosity, your interest, your inquiry into building a better life, a better code, a better world for yourself, but not by presupposing anything or looking around the corners. But let me say this as a counterpoint to what I've just said. That's just how to train your mind to not be in fight or flight or fear reflex, which I think is very, very important. But there's a counterpoint to that, which is equally as important, which is that we have a quantum consciousness. We have quantum intelligence. We have psionic intelligence. The root of the I am, the one that doesn't know itself yet, is still held in the psionic domain. So we have that intuitive and telepathic knowledge of everything, and as long as we attune ourselves back into that. So the less we use thought, wrong action in thought, and construct scenarios and construct ideas, or imagine things in the wrong way, using the wrong geometry of thought, and then we naturally default back into still point, and still point is in phase conjugation or phase coherence with the psionic blueprint, the psionic intelligence. And that is the God conscience. That is the God technology, again, which we'll see around corners for you. So it will do the work for you. It will bring you in to the right forums, to the right relationships, the right engagements, the right scenarios. So we don't need to think that we can get ourselves out of a skirmish. We need to know, immanently know, that we are clad in the armor of God, precisely because we have become again like children, and we see through the eyes of a child, with innocence and with alacrity, with presence, and with joy.
I think this was the part where people were talking in the chat about seeing fairies and elves.
Indeed, and that's a beautiful thing. Again, anyone going back a little in Lazarus will know that we've spoken at great length about the so-called unicorn phenomenon, which is connected to the genetics, frag genetics, which is the fragmented genetics. So I won't labor the point for those who understand this backstory, but we've done a fair bit of work on Lazarus with this, and we've I've interviewed and even been to meet on a couple of occasions in Romania with the world's leading frag geneticist. And what he taught me and then taught us was that you can take a fragment of DNA, which is so-called junk DNA, and you can extrapolate now using computer modeling and using AI. You can model that fragment of DNA, and you can build up the whole DNA off the fragment, okay? And then off that piece of consolidated DNA, you can also use computation, supercomputation, to extrapolate on what that DNA is or was. So you've taken a piece of junk DNA from a horse, for instance, and you've extrapolated off it, and then you could use the computer to show you what the creature looked like connected to that junk DNA. And it's not just the horse that it was extracted from, but it's a Pegasus or it's a unicorn. You're seeing griffins, and you're seeing these mythological creatures emerge through the modeling, the mathematical modeling, which tells us that the junk DNA, so-called junk DNA, is our cosmic DNA, and it's also in that sense, mythological DNA. So the junk DNA that's latent or dormant in a human being is, if you extrapolate it off the junk DNA of a human, you would find a multiplicity of extraterrestrial genomes nested into the human being. But that's been marginalized as junk because it's not relevant to be a Pleiadian on planet Earth. Or it wasn't up until now, put it that way. But the cosmogenetic extraterrestrial aspect to the human genome, or the galactic aspect to the human genome, is something which is now going to be refusing and reforging and coming back into synthesis with the human DNA. So the emergence of the angelic indigo is really a synthesis of all of the galactic genomic expression that is latent or dormant inside a human vessel that is now going to be moving into coherence. So the aspect of you, which is a benign or a benevolent reptilian, and you do have benign and benevolent reptilians, trust me, just go check out the Lakota files, you'll know what I mean. But all of these different cosmic and galactic intelligence that composite the human genome are all going to be moving back into their supernatural bearing. And we're going to start, and that is the in a sense, it's the quantum telegraphy activating at the level of fractal DNA being a fractal antenna. nothing more, nothing less in that sense. It's a frequency capacitor that receives and transmits. But the DNA is in that sense tethered to all aspects of the universe, and that's part of the resurrection of this human being that has been in this very long galactic sleep cycle, emerging into the light, into supernature. So we're going to have a lot of fun as memories start coming back and people start speaking increasingly in their native galactic tongue. That's going to be something, again, which within 5-7 years is going to become very, very mainstream in this world, especially when parents are re-educated and told to stop talking to their babies, stop imprinting bad human syntax onto babes for the first few weeks of their life. Allow the child to remember its star language first, and it will start to speak its star language if you're not imposing and imprinting from day one and allowing uncles and aunts and grandparents to all imprint false light syntax onto that infant. It'll remember its star language, it'll start to speak it, and then you can start speaking English or Russian to it, and without inhibition. But that's a very, very important piece, and I've been screaming about that for about 10 years.
So there's a couple questions that there's a little bit of an overlap between them, possibly. Mai came in and she was asking if you can talk about Tara. And then Patricia was saying, any influence of Mary Magdalene energy in 2026 in tandem with the age of Aquarius.
Forgive me, I'm going to pass on that at the moment. I'm not going to speak on that because I'm not an authority on it. Was this connected to Ireland? Is that question connected to Ireland?
It doesn't say.
Was there any reference to Ireland?
No, well, okay. The first question was just Tara. I just
Tara being the oldest reference point that we have for the moniker given to this earth plane. But again, my understanding is that that's connected to the Irish mythology. But I'm not an expert on the subject. I've spoken to experts on it, but I don't know. I just understand that Tara, in that sense, is the true name of Gaia, the true name of Earth. But then, if you went back 100 million years, there'd be other names. If you went back 1 billion years, or even 94 billion years, you'd have very, very different names. So this Earth plane of existence, let's call it that, this earthly, temporal, mortal plane of existence is a constantly changing holographic phenomenon. It shape shifts. It moves from being concave to flat to round to torus to what have you. It's never fixed and never set. It's something which conforms and comports itself to the group dreaming. Always did and always will in that sense. But yes, indeed, Tara is the name that I refer to this earth plane.
Okay, and let me just go. We're shifting gears here to a more personal question. They say, after growing up in a war zone, did you emerge with what used to be more accurately called shell shock? Or if so, how did you deal with it?
No, I don't think I came out with anything like that. I know that I tried to go back there a couple of years ago. I tried to go back and wind myself back to the worst moments that I remember. And I found it incredibly difficult to do that. So I had somebody helping me do that. But I found that I did hit a firewall. I was not really able to move beyond a certain point without some kind of for me, very significant psycho-emotional collapse going on. So I'll answer the question honestly by saying that I think that there is still probably some deeply unresolved stuff there, which in my dotage, I imagine I will need to address. But I've certainly taken myself quite far back to the age of 6, around about 6.5, and I've stopped at a given point there. But I don't feel like I've carried trauma in that sense in my vessel. I think I've done a lot of work over time to ensure that the lens of my heart is still untainted. I've done a lot of work on seeking to ensure that I don't become embittered in life, and I sure as hell have done a great deal of conscious work on disentangling myself from the natural born instinct of fight and flight and siege mentality, which is to say scarcity mentality. Because the minute you go into siege mentality, you move into scarcity mindset, and scarcity mindset is very, very dangerous. That's when you start pulling the shutters down and starting to diminish yourself and your own experience, and thereby your own bliss. And with that comes something far worse, which is guilt. And guilt is a very, very insidious thing. It's how contrast emerges in most of us from the backdrop, comes up behind us, and it's fueled by something even worse than guilt, which is shame. And shame has to be the very, very worst propensity that a human being generally has, because shame creates guilt, and guilt it creates a stricken environment, and everything closes down and calcifies and moves into entropy at that point. So I know that for myself, I've done a great deal of conscious work on ensuring that I don't carry guilt and I don't carry shame, and thereby I don't carry a scarcity mindset. I don't carry bitterness. I do have anger. A lot of it comes through me, but that's very much in the nature of the fact that I pit myself consistently against the odds and lean into life very hard and seek to do and craft and shape and sculpt and manifest as much as humanly or even superhumanly possible. I keep pushing myself in. I don't think to my detriment, because but I'm conscious of the fact that that it's very, very dangerous to carry any of the contrast or the trauma in your backstory, to bring it into the immanent, to the living moment, the now. It'll always cross contaminate. And that'll continuously be a problem, and we'll keep being met with the same problem. So someone could argue with me, well, you've been at it for so long and you're doing so much stuff, and so much of what you do is the same shit you've been doing year after year after year. So, you know, what's that all about? Is that the myth of Sisyphus that we're talking about? Are you Sisyphus pushing a rock up the top of a hill and then it rolls back down and you got to push it up again? Well, yes and no, because there is also this piece in sharpening the blade and the sword of St. Michael, in this case, of pure truth and right action. You are forced and you're required to collapse, to hit the dust, hit the deck, and then get up and have to dust yourself down again and go straight back in. And again, get knocked back, get knocked down. And if you can take those hard knocks consecutively and consistently and still get up and keep forging the right action, pure truth, right action lens, which is what I've been doing for a long time, you begin to see that you are absolutely bang on target, that you are one way or the other piercing the veil, and that it is prevailing and it will make a difference, and my will be done is thy will be done. And that's a very, very deeply empowering thing when you realize that God's will and your will are fully aligned.
Beautiful. I see. Want to go to some of our starred questions.
Oh, let me have a glance. Are you going for a tour in Europe in 2026? Let me just move through these quickly. That's from Eva. No, I'm not. I was planning to do that last year. I got fucked over securely by my producer in the United Kingdom. I haven't named the bitch, but at some point I might do. She ended up stealing all the money off the back of my UK tour, to her eternal shame, and she knows exactly who she is. And if she does pop her head out from the floorboards, I'll probably bushwhack it. But that was a laborious tour that I did in the UK. It was a very good one. Very pleased that I did it. But it really stung me, and I'm somewhat distrusting of tour promoters that I don't really know. And I was then asked if I would do a tour through Europe by Hans Rittfeld, who's an amazing promoter, and alas, he died last year as we were beginning to concretize the tour plans for Europe, and we were going to do, I think, 18 countries or something. I was very excited about it, and then beloved Hans died, which was not foreseen. And I've not resurrected those plans, but I can tell you that I don't have the physical time to do touring like that anymore, not with the treasury, the coin, and the banking infrastructure that we're building out, and the land holdings. In the Africa project is huge. The New Earth Africa, the New Earth Tanasi project, and also the New Earth Bacala one, which we're having to now break the bone and reset. And so there's a lot to get on with, and Bali and Lombok as well. So there's so much activity on, and that's outside of what we're doing in biotech, which is probably the single most exciting thing. But again, I'm prohibited from speaking about that for the time being. I think 1st of July, I'll be allowed to speak. But on the New Earth technology side, also developing some exciting stuff there, and forging some very, very exciting relationships. So much work to do, and touring. You know, when you do touring, as I do, it's relentless. You know, I drive myself on tour because I don't like being driven. So I'll drive across the whole of America like twice a year, and I've done that for the last 4 years. I've stopped now. I can't do it. And as you know, I don't charge money. I subsidize my own tours, and it's been cripplingly expensive for me to do that. And I just can't do that any longer. I was doing that hundreds of towns across America, and doing 3-hour lectures, and then, you know, hotel, and then on the road, drive for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours, check into a hotel, wake up the next day, do another gig, on the road again. And it's just, it's very, very expensive, and it's very, very exhausting. So I determined that I have to focus on manifesting the new earth now, and anchoring and grounding. And that's exactly what I'm doing, starting this next week in Mexico. And then I'll be back in Africa probably in March, April, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm sorry to say, the very last place on earth I would choose to tour right now would be Europe, Eva. Even though I was greatly looking forward to it, I think it's just too fraught with too many problems, and I'm pretty damn sure I'd catch a bullet. So no, the answer is no.
Lori was asking, how do we ensure the vulnerable and disabled do not get left behind in all the advancements and opportunities now and in the future?
I don't understand the question. You better jump back in, Christy, because I don't understand that question.
Maybe within your projects, I don't know if you would have like an overall global view of the vulnerable and disabled.
I just don't understand the question. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I just don't get the question. Every human being is vulnerable. And frankly, around about now, pretty much every human being is somewhat disabled as well, you know, in a multiplicity of different ways. We are all of us creatures of God. We are all of us bleeding hearts. We are all of us vulnerable. We are all of us variously in a state of anxiety about where the world is going, about how secure can we find ourselves. This is a group dreaming exercise, and we have to all lean in together and forge these answers and these outcomes. But it's not a question I can't.
Yeah, she's clarifying in the projects.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, Patricia's asking how to work with visions received through our dream state.
One more time, Christy.
How to work with visions received through our dream state.
I'm not that kind of a consciousness teacher. I don't haven't considered that question ever in my life, and that's largely because I don't dream. Very rarely dream. I was just telling my mum a couple of days ago that if I do dream, it's the same dream for half a century, and the dream is labyrinthine. It is, I am inside a labyrinth, and it's an underground subterranean labyrinth, and it's slimy and it's dark and it's tempestuous and it's spooky and it's kind of filled with mortal dread. And I am leading myself, and oftentimes in the dream others, through this labyrinthine construct, always leading out of it and prevailing, always prevailing. So it never feels like a nightmare. It's never felt like a nightmare. It's always felt like that's just the isness of this fucked up binary world, trapped in the illusion of duality, and that we need to get on with it. We need to synthesize and harmonize and alchemize dualistic experience into the higher outcome, into the octave. And that's what we're getting on with doing. But that's the extent of my dreaming. I mean, I have had some lucid dreams where I found myself transported, but it's physical, and I find myself there. I spoke about that fairly recently. I only spoke about that in the last year. I think it was to Michael Sala or to Dr. Michael Sala, I think I was talking, or Elena Danan, but I was talking about the fact that I had been transported to an underground alien military facility last year when I was in Mexico. Literally 1 minute to the next, I found myself transported there, and I was okay with the experience. It didn't shatter me, but I found myself in a facility looking through a huge plate glass window that was in the side of a mountain, and that mountain itself was inside a biosphere that was inner Earth. It was a huge pocket of inner Earth, and I had a astrobot, some kind of a android creature, very powerful, immensely powerful and intelligent, very dangerous but very benign, and it was with me, and it was there to protect me, and it was also there to ensure that I didn't do anything other than observe. So I was able to observe this facility and met with some scientists and military people with clipboards, and it was just very weird. And then able to observe through the plate glass into this kind of inner Earth biosphere, seeing all these different anti-gravitational craft flying, and kind of micro civilization was functioning beautifully there. But it was almost a Jurassic type of, it was almost like pterodactyls crossed with light ship. Bizarre, and lots of beings, humanoid type beings who were getting on with life. And it was an extraordinary thing. It was almost as though I was being taken there to observe a hybridization program that was going on in Earth. None of it shocked me. Everything there made I cogitated it perfectly, and then I was transported back to my room in Bacalar in Mexico. And that wasn't a dream. That was a real experience. But it happened because I had been for some months very, very interested in the question of inner Earth facilities and what's really going on. I've been exploring the Bucetti Mountains alien base there with the general and our friends in Romania, in Bucharest, over the last couple of years, not with any luck, exploring other extraordinary things like the Ark in Jordan and so on and so forth. So I raised the question of these things in my own mind, and I have to say, up until that experience occurred last year, I was slightly pissed off every time I talked to a Tony Rodriguez or a Laura Eisenhower, or when they're telling me about their experiences, and I'm thinking, well, why the fuck haven't I had any of those experiences? It's almost like that, and that was why, boom, I was given a full salient lucid experience of that, and that ticked all the boxes in my head. I'm like, great, thank you. I don't particularly need to see more or know more. I'm fine with all of these storylines. I've lived through some extraordinary storylines myself, so I'm not an idle I don't have any idle curiosity, put it that way. I just want to get on and architect, engineer, and build the new Earth. And that starts with the economy, but we're getting on with that roundabout now.
Do you believe there will be reverse aging and increased longevity in your lifetime?
You see, it's so naughty. Who's asking that question? What's the name?
Linda?
Well, I don't know if Linda knows me, but it feels like she might do, because she's being cheeky. She's asking me the question that I'm not allowed to answer because I'm hogtied by legal binding, not allowed to speak about that stuff. The other day on the Lazarus in-house Q&A, because it was in-house, I was able to talk a little bit about that, which I did to our members only. But I'm categorically unable to speak to any of that publicly, so to speak, or on social media. I believe that on the 1st of July, I will have liberty to some extent speak publicly. I've been told that. I will know in 2 days' time, because I'm on my way tomorrow to Hamburg and then Berlin. And by the end of this trip in Germany, I'll have more clarity on what my legal constraints are. The short answer, I will tell you, is that, as you will recall, anyone who listens to my voice, that in the last 2-3 years, I was saying in multiple forums, and certainly in every single stage I got on my touring, every lecture I did, I said categorically that if you're alive within 3 years, you will be alive in 300 plus years. If you can stay alive for the next 3 years, you will be alive in 300, without any question of doubt. I was saying that because that was where biological science it is coming to this great kind of fulmination. And all I can tell you now is that, like in many of these things, I've proven to be absolutely correct, that we are on the threshold, I don't want to say of immortality, but the immortal genome is about to enter its resurrection now. And it's very, very exciting. I don't think it's going to hit the high street for at least 60 months, maybe 72 months, 6 years, maybe 7 years. I don't think it's going to hit the high street. I may be wrong about that, because things are moving at quantum speed, so I might be completely wrong. But in my reckoning, and I've worked on AI simulations in the last 2 weeks on this question, how quickly can certain biological technologies get to the high street without causing absolute catastrophic failure of our psycho-civilization? And the AI simulations have all said it cannot happen within 7 years. It must not hit the high street within 7 years. It can hit different grades, different echelon of the human family, but it must not and cannot be unleashed onto the high street for 7 to 10 years. And AI is very clear about that. So it's not as though AI makes the decision. This is high politics, high diplomacy involved behind this kind of biotech stuff. But just to say, I'll make whatever pronouncements I can as soon as I can in the public domain. But until then, just know that everything I have been saying in the last 3 years has now come to bear. And it's going to be something that everyone on planet Earth knows about by, I think, 2032. But I've been saying that as well. This capacity to live for hundreds and hundreds of years and to age reverse, which is connected also. Don't forget that the age reversal is directly connected to the weaponization of the biosphere. So the reason why we age and why entropy kicks into the cells and the atoms is because of a weaponized biosphere. The minute you remove weaponized electromagnetic frequencies from the biosphere, which is glyphosates and depleted uranium and the tens of thousands of patented chemical toxins that the agrochemical and pharmaceutical industries have introduced into the world, including diapers and tissues and earbuds, and even the more innocuous things, things like the wool dyes, the dyes that are used, synthetic dyes, everything is a synthetic molecule that is permeating the world, is the inhibitor to the immortal paradigm, because every single molecule and every the geometry of the atoms of synthetic molecules are releasing isotope frequencies which are incoherent with God, incoherent the angelic realm, and so that's what's locking us into the devil's kingdom. The war we should be waging is not against Russia, not against Afghanistan, not against drug traffickers. The war we should be waging is against synthetic molecules altogether. And again, my lectures and my touring, I always speak about that, and I show the slides of synthetic molecules versus organic molecules, and I explain how that is Cain and Abel, how that is Enki and Enlil, how the synthetic molecule versus the organic molecule is the dialectic, and why we need to rid and cleanse the world, cleanse our bodies, cleanse our minds of synthetic molecules, which is why I'm not a fan of the people dropping these psychedelics. Synthetic psychedelics is a fucking idiotic game. I'm seeing firsthand how it's shredding people's ability to convene with their own angelic spirit. It's a hideous thing, and it's so destructive. But we have to rid ourselves essentially and the earth plane of synthetic molecules. And incidentally, that is what the jurisdictions that we're building, like in Tennessee and in Africa for sure, are going to be free and rid of synthetic molecules. That's the source coding premise of the kingdom of heaven on earth, is that we must rid ourselves of these rogue isotope frequencies, which bring incoherence into the field, because that incoherence builds up in a monumental way and creates the inhibitor, and it dampens down our capacity to ascend, because we're literally locked into the visible spectrum of light for another period of time. So don't start me on the subject of how time intersects with synthetic molecules, but that's, again, really what the story is all about. It's about time and synthetic molecules, and how money then becomes the load bearing between time and poison. Poison is everything and everywhere. So you go into any store, go to your local petrol gas station, go into any store, and what are you looking at? You're looking at fucking poisons. You're looking at 98% of every single thing you see and touch and smell is a goddamn poison. From the aluminum tin cans to the plastics of the tomato ketchup to the antibiotics and to the preservatives and so on and so forth. So the whole lot is connected to synthetic molecules, and that is the kingdom of the devil. So until we compute that piece and step away from that, I'm afraid we're going to be locked into the kingdom of the devil. But the new earth is source coded on eradicating synthetic molecules.
So that actually brings us a little bit over. Do you want to take one more question, or do you want to just wrap?
I'm happy to take a couple more questions if they're. I mean, the audience is rising, so it might make sense just keep going a little bit. Just reading here. Am I familiar with the Swahili language? Yes, I am, but I don't speak it. I think my mother probably speaks a bit of Swahili, but I don't. I didn't grow up in that part of the world. I grew up further south. Can you see anything else there? Yeah. Okay, we've answered the piece about reverse aging and increased longevity, and it won't just be reversed aging, incidentally, Linda, and it won't just be longevity. It'll be living optimally in an optimized mental and physical and biological health.
Okay, the one I saw here was if you can comment on the now popular phenomenon of remembering. How should we deal with this in the most positive way? I'm not familiar with.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with what is meant in popular parlance by remembering, but I'm going to take a guess that it's to do with the emergence of the photon band, or the emergence of the new geometry of light that I was speaking to a moment ago. And that's an astrophysical phenomenon that's upon us. And as we move further into convention with this photon band, which is essentially the plasma, hyperdimensional plasma burst coming out of these center black hole, so to speak, of the central spiral of the Milky Way. So if you turn the Milky Way, which is a spiral disk, and you look at it like that, you'd see a plasma cloud coming out of the 0 point on either side. It's a counterpoint. It's a destruction and an anti-destruction counterpoint. And these hyperdimensional plasma fields or waves coming out create essentially a band, a photon band through which the spiral of the galaxy moves. So we are moving through that photon band right now, and it's a period of time, temporal time, that lasts about 200 odd years. And we're transitioning Pisces into Aquarius now, but we moved over the threshold, beyond the event horizon in that sense. And that this new photon band, as it impacts us, means that we're being bombarded at the subatomic level by these vibral subatomic photons of light, and they are enlightening us from the inside out. And that's also causing remembrance, because essentially when we last moved through that photon band about 13,000 years ago, when we went into auto-destruct planetarily, there was still the memory of what took place. I mean, the memory of everything is encoded anyway in the quantum. It's just that the photon band of vibral light activates the dormant memory, so to speak. And as you then move back in through that light field, it reconvenes you with what was installed into that photon cloud in past epochs, as it relates to your story, your soul, the evolution of your soul. So we are now able to, the more activated we are in terms of actualized we are, the more we are seeing and remembering these past imprints are more palpable to us. They don't just come as kind of distant dreamscapes. They're coming back like, oh, fuck me, I was there. That was me. And you're remembering even languages. So it's all to do with this emergence of the new geometry of light.
Yes, and she says, well, somebody says, Lori says, remembering is all over social media. There are many people on Facebook and YouTube talking about it. We are all energy, Ralph Smart, etc. This concept of we are all energy. Okay.
Well,
okay,
yes, indeed. We're, of course, we were talking about this the other day. I was doing a show yesterday, I think it was, with Ethan Lucas on the Ethan Lucas show, or 2 days ago, and speaking about electromagnetic frequencies, and that ultimately there is no such thing as a wave or a particle. There's no such thing as a lepton or a quark. These are all just constructs of the mind that we've concocted in order to describe the phenomenon of reality, but none of that actually exists. But what we do know exists is electromagnetic frequency. So frequency is everything in that sense. It breaks. I think we can break it down to frequency.
Okay, and just one last thing. Do you interact with any other beings?
Well, this is an interesting question. I have done, and I've spoken about this on Lazarus. I have done. I've been very blessed in that. I've engaged very, very positively with, I think, what you would call angelics, full-fledged angelic beings. I've had very, very unnatural and unholy engagement with a reptilian entity and being in the late 90s, and but that became a very holy event or experience after the fact, because it ended up being a stigmata experience for me that helped me to alchemize everything into the living moment. So that's where I learned about the geometry of the living moment. Is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, is how we conduct right action in the living moment and stand in the flame of pure truth. And that was because that algorithm is what caused me to survive the experience with the reptilian. Had I not have summoned my highest counsel in that moment and recognized that pure truth and right action in the living moment was the path of least resistance, the highest outcome, and then knowing that in that moment, I was able to redeem the experience with the reptilian, which was otherwise there to destroy me, to kill me. No question about that. But in recognizing that it was not the enemy, that it was the sum total of the the unresolved aspects of the formation of my soul through the entirety of time as I've experienced it at the soul level. That's what that reptile represented to me. And as long as I summoned myself into the living moment in that instant and took full possession of the Atman, my relationship with Atman, which is Alpha Omega, and that's what I managed to do in that, and then saw instantly that this reptilian being that was about to harm me, that I am that thou art. And that's what, in a sense, disarmed it and disarmed the experience into what became a very beautiful experience after the fact. So, but I temper saying, oh, it was a godless, unholy experience. I temper it by saying it was also the most powerful and beatific experience imaginable after the fact. It is important that we start to see that the devil always serves God's design. All of us in our lives, we need to stop being binary and stop shelving and compartmentalizing things into good and bad and happy and sad. It's not about good and bad. It's not about happy or sad. It's that wonderful old parable about the king, who was given a gift. The most beautiful gift was a ring that he was given, which said, "This too will pass," and that's the ultimate gift that any of us can give ourselves, is to do a reckoning with the fact that if we are happy, it's going to pass, and if we're sad, it's going to pass. And that's just how we alchemize the temporal life experience, or the human condition, into a higher outcome.
Well, thank you, Sasha, for coming on and doing this last minute Q&A. I think maybe our little mishap with the recording might have been, for all the right reasons to be able to do this. And I wanted to just, point everybody to the QR codes here if they want to check out a Lazarus membership. And also I wanted to share your Instagram QR code for those of you who want to follow your social media. And we have, I believe the Pulse Report is coming up on January 17th. And the link to subscribe to the Pulse Report is in the comments section. So I think that's the next thing that we have lined up for you.
Beautiful. And friends, thank you. I can see 500 people in this room, and God knows how many people in the other room. This is wonderful spending a couple of hours with you. Thank you. Thanks, Misty. Appreciate it.
Sure. See you next time.